Hi, welcome and hello, and thank you for stopping by and listening to this message. My name is Kellie Cottam and I am the director of Step Up Britain and the founder of Forced Adoption Exposed. Currently in the UK there is a huge problem going on. It has been stated that a child is taken by social services and the local authority every 20 minutes. And the thing that we have to ask ourselves is, if this is the case, that literally every 20 minutes a child is being detained, then you've got to sort of ask yourself what's going on. If you were going to look at that as an average day, on the basis that this figure is a reflection of what is going on. That's 72 children. That's 72 children a day. Over a week that's 504 children, and over the space of a month, you're looking at 2,160 children. That's massive. That's a massive amount of children who are being taken. Look at that over a scale of a year, then you're looking at, I've got figures down in front, that's why I keep looking down. But you're looking at like 26,280 children a year being taken. Government statistics, and unfortunately we only really have things from 2013. On the 31st of March 2013, there were currently 68,110 children looked after in England. This is obviously just looking at England. And this is an increase of 2% compared to March 2012. And then there was an increase of 12%. 12%. Now that's only from 2013. And on the basis of them taking away the amount of children that they are currently, then that figure is going to be huge. And I know that we're looking currently at the moment at nearly 100,000 children in the care system, and that doesn't include children who have already been adopted and have sort of come out of the system. That doesn't even include those that went in the system and came out. Got down here that there was 3,980 looked after children were adopted during the end of March 2013, and there was an increase of 15%, and then a further increase of 20%, and this is the highest figure since 1992. And there was 28,460 children ceased to be looked after during the end of March, and that's an increase again of 3%, and then that jumps to 14. And we have to ask ourselves, what is going wrong? Is society so bad that there are all of these parents who are highly abusive to their children? Because don't forget, in order to take a child away, there has to be significant harm to a child. Now, I'm not saying that as a local authority that we should wait until children have been physically, sexually or emotionally abused before people step in. However, since Baby P, this has become, out of control. Now, I have a website and it's called Forced Adoption Exposed, which you are welcome to go and have a look. And what I'm basically saying is that nobody would question in, say, the 70s or 80s when young girls were becoming single mothers and children were being taken and placed for adoption. People know that happened. You would go to a convent, and nobody is saying, no, this stuff never happened. However, we're in 2014 and children are being taken from hospitals, and I've been witness to this myself. I've seen what is going on in this system. I was actually at a birth of a young baby who still has yet been to be named. Well, certainly not named by the parents at the moment. And it took 20 police officers to come to a hospital to detain a young innocent baby from a mother who had been subjected to tears, who was in a hospital bed, and a father who was ultimately very scared at the thought of his child being taken. And these parents haven't done anything wrong. I've seen their paperwork. I've seen what sort of fabrications have been put in place. This mother is being told that she has learning difficulties. Nobody's defining what this learning difficulty is. This is a mother who, when she was a younger adolescent, she had a child, and unfortunately she was in a domestic violence relationship at the time, and social services placed her son with the grandparents. Never to work with the mother, never to bring the children back. That was just it. He went to the grandmother's and that was the end of the matter. You know, she left the relationship and she was left with that child. On 10 years later, and she's in a relationship with a very, very nice guy. You know, she settled down, she's had a baby. And the moment that baby flagged up onto the system, social services intervened. There was no reason to intervene with this family. There never was a reason. And, you know, I've seen, you know, the evidence. I've been to their house. I've seen their photographs. And, you know, this is a child who was so loved and adored. Yet this child is currently in foster care being placed for adoption. Unfortunately, or non-unfortunately, while we're going through these procedures, this mother fell pregnant. She was scared. She didn't know what to do, and they didn't tell social services immediately that she was pregnant. They were in the court processes, and you know, once you're stepping into this court arena, it is a car crash. You know, you are spinning and spiraling out of control. It is the most emotional and heartbreaking situation any person could ever be in. I mean, if you don't know this system and you have children, I ask you just for a minute to look at your child and imagine that you hadn't had that time with your child, that somebody walked into the hospital literally the moment after you had given birth to your child. This is the most amazing, wonderful, romantic experience that any person and couple could ever go through. You were bringing a life into the world, and these children were loved. They were loved and adored, and they were cared for and looked after. The father works, he provides for his children. And, you know, can you imagine how this father and this mother felt? You know, this is a mother who's cradled and held her baby in her stomach for 9 months. She's loved him and nurtured him. But worse, you know, she's also having this fear that, you know, somebody's going to be taking this baby away. And this is literally what is going on. And it is going on not just in the UK, it is going on all around the world. And I'm sorry, but no child, once they have been brought into this world, has been significantly harmed. Now, in order to detain a child, social services have to apply to the courts for a court order. They have to attend with the police, and the police do what's called a Section 20. And that means, obviously, if the child has suffered from significant harm, then they would be able to remove these children. But what's actually happening is children are being removed for possible future emotional harm. Now, since Baby P, obviously, social services don't want to make the same mistakes. There are children who are abused in this country, and there is some horrendous stories of what happens to some children in their home. But these are not people that social services are going to find out about. And things are not going to sort of come to a head until a child is killed. So what social services is pretty much doing is it's like a needle in a haystack. They're sort of like going in, assessing families, going through all their you know, history, and in many cases people who are under social services or alert social services tend to be children who've been through the system themselves. You know, any single one of us who can become vulnerable to social services, you know, from the moment your child is born, you're under a health visitor. If a health visitor has concerns, their first thing is to sort of refer to social services. If you have a child in education and a teacher has a problem, then obviously referrals are made to social services. So pretty much until your children are 18, every person in this country is vulnerable to social services. Now, the horrendous thing is, as I say, that they are vulnerable to social services. If social services is about the best interest of the child, then people would be welcoming social services coming into their lives. You know, if a social worker knocked on your door and said, hey, you know, we're here to help, you'd be like, hey, come in, make a cup of coffee, you know, let's have a chat, this is my problem and I really need help with this. However, this is not what's happening. What's happening is parents are going to social services because they feel that they need help with the situation. Sometimes the problem can seem a lot worse than it actually is, and parents haven't had the time to sit down and think about it. Or social services are intervening into somebody's life, and a lot of the time this is based on false allegations, false reports, especially living in, you know, sort of, what am I sort of thinking? Sort of like council areas, there's problems with neighbours, you find a high amount of gossip. You find high amount of gossip in a lot of places, but wherever there is that gossip, or you've offended somebody in the same, you know, in some ways, there is that mentality to sort of think, oh, you know, just ring social services. So if I was to do that to you now, and I was to ring social services and say, hi, I've just seen Jack Jones down the road, and they've just dragged their child across the streets and all this sort of stuff. The moment that allegation is put against you, then either you're going to have social services coming into your life where they'll just want to investigate, talk to you, find that there's no issues, close the door. However, they can actually just go off and have meetings. Now, during that meeting, they can ascertain information about you. Only some information is protected, and you have to sign for the Freedom of Information Act. Some information they can gather themselves, police records, things like that. Now, the people who tend to abuse their children actually tend to be clean as a whistle. You don't tend to find many things against them, and you know, you've got your genuine people who would think, you know, wouldn't even think twice to ring the police on an incident that may have occurred or something that they've seen, and this is all sort of stamps against you. Now, what is basically happening is, whether they have a Section 20, whether they have a court order, or whether they just want to come in and speak to you, parents are being thrown into a 26-week process. Now, there are targets in this country. In fact, in 2004, I think it was, it might have been 2002, but 2004, 2002, Tony Blair set targets for removals of 1,000 children a month. Now, that's on the basis that they were failing a high amount of children that were being abused, and maybe if we can imagine it sort of like it's that thing that sort of like goes across, a conveyor belt. Okay, so 1,000 children, remove, adopt, remove, adopt, remove, adopt, remove, adopt. Now that's the basics of this. For them, they want stability and permanency for children as quick as possible. Now, if they've got parents coming in and there are problems, and there are, of course, there are people in this situation where there are problems. You know, people have been subjected to some form of abuse. They haven't had the correct help. They've gone on the wrong track. Many end up in drugs or alcohol. Now the thing is, even if somebody, and you can take two very different heroin addicts, okay? You can take one heroin addict, and the image that you would have of that would be somebody who's on the streets, who's constantly, you know, sort of and then there are functioning heroin addicts. There are functioning working heroin addicts. You wouldn't even be able to tell that they did this. There are heroin addicts who don't look after themselves, and there are heroin addicts that do. There are heroin addicts that if you walked into their houses, you could find needles on the floor. But there are heroin addicts who've got OCD and live in the most spotless house that you've ever got. There are heroin addicts who can function and look after their children. And there are heroin addicts who don't know how to look after their children. They don't even know how to look after themselves. There are alcoholics that are the same. There are functioning alcoholics, and then there are non-functioning alcoholics. Somebody could have been in domestic violence. There is a high amount of serious levels of domestic violence. Somebody could have their head kicked in on a daily basis. And then there is an argument, which is classed as domestic violence. In fact, if you're going through a tough time in a relationship, and you know, it's to the point that you're arguing, and we do live in a fear society, we do live in a society where people would ring the police. They don't want to sort of get involved themselves, so they'll just ring the police. If the police attend to your property, 1 strike, 2 strike, 3 strikes, class as domestic violence. You don't even have to have actual physical violence. You know, you could just have this shouting and screaming, but to the police, you know, this is classed as domestic violence. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because once you go into that court process, the judge just reads pieces of paper. So if you've got somebody who's been sexually abused, okay, there is an association to the types of person that this may be. If somebody's been in domestic violence, if they're involved in drugs or alcohol. And of course, you know, in an ideal world, this is not the right environment for children. Children need love and encouragement and, you know, education and, you know, the freedom to be themselves. I know people who are heroin addicts who can do all of that. They just don't necessarily have the self-respect for themselves, but they've never harmed their children in any way, shape or form. Now, the judge is basically reading paperwork. Now, I understand this process because I know this process personally, okay? I went into foster care when I was 15, and I reported sexual abuse at the age of 12. I hadn't reported it while I was in the situation, but I had reported it on an occasion where I was being put back into that situation, and I didn't want to see this person, and he was a step uncle of mine. Now, again, sexual abuse, that word, you can imagine anything. It's like rape, the word rape, okay? Anything where the person does not want that to happen comes under those categories. Now, there are so many levels and so many different versions or understandings of what that may be, that the judge doesn't understand that or know that. He just sees that word, okay? So he can create a picture in his mind. Now, I mean, one of the biggest problems that you've got as well is, you know, they'll use diagnoses against you. So once you go into the court process, the first thing that sort of goes on is it's a gathering of information. That's pretty much what's going on. So bang, they've got your kids, bang, you're in court, your children are away from you, and you're meant to then not react to this situation. I actually said to the legals when I was in court once that, you know, it is a secret to court, it's all closed, and, you know, nobody knows what's going in there, and you're in on there on your own. And I said to them, so basically, every one of you could pin me down onto the floor, and you could rape me, and then you expect me to stand up, brush myself down, say nothing while it was going on, and say nothing after it's been done, and carry on speaking to you as if you were my best friend. Don't cry. Don't scream. Don't make a noise. And certainly don't put a complaint in. Is that right? Is that right? This is the most emotional experience that you will ever go through. This is the most horrendous, not just for you. It's not even about you, it's about your children. If it hurts as a mother to take a child, can you imagine how that feels to your kids? I know this because when they took my children, my son was hiding under the table. But who do you think they blamed? Me. Because the abuse was so severe. But it wasn't. My children were loved and cared for and really, really well looked after. They missed me. They didn't understand what was going on. They thought they were going for the night and they were coming back home. My children were detained by perjury, okay? I have a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and social services refused to understand that. They made false allegations against me for things that would have been considered as reasonable adjustments with a parent and a child of this condition. The police further fabricated further evidence, and the social worker fabricated evidence, with which I've got no problem, explaining or talking about all of this. but the benefit of this is to talk about what's going on as a whole, and I'm trying to prove to you that not everybody whose children have been taken have abused their children. In fact, very, very, very rarely has a child actually been abused before it's taken. It's probably few and far between. Most of them actually abused in foster care. This is the horrendous thing about this. Children are taken and actually abused in foster care. I'm not saying all foster parents are abusers. It's far from it. I've got very good friends who are foster carers, and I know some amazing foster carers. One of the 4 different placements that my children have, I've seen that one of the foster parents were pretty decent people, but the first ones weren't. The first ones were dangerous. Now, the thing I have to ask is, do they take children and bond break them? Do they remove them and break their spirits and souls? Could be. There could be something really, really sinister going on in this system. Now, we already know. I mean, who was it? President Reagan, or whatever his name was, the one who was assassinated, had said that there is people who are wanting to break down people, their spirit, and family units, and basically just clone people into sheeps and getting them following the rules and regulations of the country, and keeping people basically as ants for the queen bee. And you can call it conspiracy, but there's some stuff going on. There's some serious stuff going on. Now, obviously, there are genuine nice social workers out there who care about children, but you've got 2 very different things. You've got parents with physical or mental conditions who need support or need to just reflect and have a look at where they are and where they're going. They don't have any parental needs, but maybe need to deal with themselves. And then, of course, obviously, you've got people who are, genuinely pretty fucked up individuals who do some very severe things to children. Some people even plan to do it. Some foster carers or staff or social workers and teachers actually go into that area to be around children in order to abuse them. That happens. We know it does. We can prove it does. But something serious is going wrong. When you've got, say, like a system where there's incentives and bonuses and, the foster care industry is a billion pound industry. So where's all this money coming from? And who is the product in order to do this? In order to sustain a company that is making that amount of a turnover, there has to be a product. Is the product the social worker? No. Is the product the solicitors, legals, the judges? No. The product's the children. Without children in this services, there isn't a service. No social workers to pay, no judges to pay, no legals to pay. Without children in this service, there's no children that need adopting. But the question is, are children needing adopting, or are there adopters out there needing children? You get my point? Are children being taken to provide a service to those who want to adopt? Or are people coming forward because they care about these children? Now, I've been watching these programs that have been going on lately with Wanted and 15,000 children and counting. And I've been watching these adopters. And there are some really nice people out there who just want to make a difference. And you usually find that these are people who've been through it themselves. But the most of them, they think it's catalogue. Go on the website, so you can flick through children, look at their pictures. It's catalogue. It's like choosing a dress. Do they want a red one, a blue dress, black dress? Do you want a blonde kid, dark hair? Do you want a redhead kid? Has it got blue eyes, blonde hair? I'm sorry, but when I gave birth to my child, I didn't care what colour hair he had or she had. It wasn't about their eye colour. It was my child. What do you think I was going to do? Return it if its hair colour was a different one that I didn't want? What, I can take babies down to the market and go and swap them around for one that I think suits me? That's not how it should be. There are people out there who want children. They can't have them themselves and they want to be able to adopt. But do they ever consider the parents that these children are being taken from? And I'm sorry, but even parents who are really seriously struggling and need help don't deserve to have the children removed and placed for adoption. And the way this system works with the contact, with the way you see your children, it is abusive. Do you know that you're not allowed to have contact with your children on their birthdays if it's not on your day? And there's no contact at Christmas, and prisoners get that. But not parents in foster care. Why? Why would they do that to a child? Why would they put a child through that? Where's mummy on my birthday? Where's daddy at Christmas? Why can I not see my mummy? Why would you do that to a child? The contact of the child is set up based on their procedures, not what's right for the child. Because they can't afford to do that. They can't afford the contact. They don't have the support staff. They don't have the means to be able to do that. Each social worker can have up to 50 cases. How are they meant to keep the contact between the mother and the father and the children? And if obviously they're separated, how do they do that? Can't. So literally they railroad you. They come in, you take your children, and they're gone, they're placed for adoption. That's pretty much what's going. Or they're just sitting in foster care waiting. Because even though there is this market out there, they're not moving fast enough. Because just as social services are screwing it up with the parents, they're also screwing it up with the adoption process too. And what's happening to these children? They're basically funding the foster care industry. Nearly 100,000 children funding the foster care industry. And you know what? They don't even talk to the children about their needs. And I know this because I've been through the system myself. Nobody ever spoke to me. Nobody ever come and met with me or asked me about my needs or what I wanted. They had their own conversations based on their own opinions. And nobody ever really knew what was actually going on. They just observed the situation and made judgments. And they were wrong. Okay? So my situation, and I'm sure a lot of people can look at me and say, oh cool, how's she had her kids taken off her? I have an 18-year-old. I have a 15-year-old. Both are great kids. Well, an adult. I got an adult. Can you believe it? I got an adult. But my babies, they've got my babies. Now, if I was an abusive parent, now my children were taken on the 13th of December 2012, so obviously my two older children were younger. Didn't remove them from me. They caused some problems with my younger child, but, you know, they weren't even brought into court because they were not adoptable. Now, Faith and Aaron is now 5 and Faith is now 4. And when they were taken, they were 2 and 3. And they needed to railroad that really quickly because that makes it adoptable. They wanted to literally remove those children, place them for adoption. Now, my children were taken in Flintshire, in Wales. I've always had social services in my life. I'm a single mum and I don't live with family around me. So just little things. I have a physical condition. I go to hospital on, sometimes only once a year. Sometimes it's, sometimes we may have a spiral where, I'm in and out of hospital over the space for a few months. But, I've got children. I'm a single mum. So I do have support, and when I come out of hospital, I'd had support. And then I moved to Flintshire. And it was the most abusive situation I have ever seen. where they fabricated information, where they abused my family during the process, where they abused my children through the contact. I mean, the last time I saw my daughter, she pushed me into a toilet and she begged me. She begged me in tears to just take her. She's 3. Crying, please, Mommy, please, just take me, I want to go home. This was nearly 5 months into it. Yet all the way through the paperwork it says that the children have no bond with their mother. I've got a great bond with my children. I adore my children. You know, I even sacrificed my life for my children with this physical condition that I have, and I hemorrhaged giving birth to Aaron. So I'm closer to my children than I suppose most people would be because of the circumstances that we've been through. I'm extremely protective over them. So then most people out there could hear about somebody who's had their children taken, and the first thing they think of is their child abusers. Am I a child abuser? Never abused a child in my life. Never would. It's just not in me. However, I'm a victim of it. Not by my parents, but circumstances beyond that. So therefore, society basically says if you're abused, you will ultimately become an abuser. Actually makes you the other way around. I've got failings on my parents' point, of course I have, but they didn't wake up every day and think, how can I screw my daughter up? They just made mistakes. And that makes me want to be a better parent, because I don't want to make the mistakes that my parents did. I want to be a better mum. Now, I haven't got it right all the way through. Of course I haven't. You know, I didn't start from, you know, sort of like normal circumstances. And I had my first son at 17. And I didn't stay with the father. And I did have issues from some of the things that happened. More so, I suppose my biggest issue really was the rejection from my father when I was a teenager. That probably caused the biggest problems to me more than anything. And, you know, ultimately, you know, a daughter and their dad's relationship is so important in terms of having romantic relationships. And, of course, you know, I had been through, you know, sexual abuse and then a rape. So, you know, that is going to cause problems. And don't get me wrong, even still, you know, at 36, you know, I still have nightmares. Not often, but, you know, it's still there. It does change you as a person. You don't have to let it destroy you, though. But it is going to change you. You have to accept that. But the reason that I want people to really seriously look at what is going on in this system is because we need to make stand. Even parents out there who, you know, have maybe crossed the threshold, things have been a bit difficult, they might have lost their home, or, you know, they are on benefits and they were not able to provide all those things. You know, when someone's coming through the system, they've got to be coming through the system better people. So why is this system failing so many people? And if there are so many children needing to be taken, then why is the government not sitting up and saying, okay, for every child that's been taken, there's 2 parents that need to be off the streets? So they can take my 2 children, but I can walk out onto the streets. I've got a park. I live in a block of flats with children. I live down the road. I see children every day. It breaks my damn heart having to see children every day. But, you know, if I wanted to abuse a child, it would be easy for me to do so. You watch now, someone will edit that and say if I wanted to abuse a child. But, you know, is something really bad going on with this system? Now, I don't remember anywhere as a child being taught how to build relationships. I don't remember as a child ever being taught about Equifax and Experian to make sure that I never affected a credit record, or I don't remember anybody ever teaching me this stuff. And it's not that I wasn't listening, because I did used to listen. And I don't ever remember anyone teaching me about being a mum. You know, you learn this stuff as you go along. Now, you've got things out there like Joe Frost, Super Nanny, okay? Now, people come to Super Nanny in dire situations. They want to fucking kill their kids, yeah? You know, these are like, rah! You know, some of them are dragging their kids and, you know, dragging them by the arms and throwing them to the floor and stuff like that. But they come out the other side better parents, and they resolve these situations, and they go on and they have great lives, and they're forever grateful for the help and support that they've had. They were at the end of their tether. But could you imagine if Joe had to turn around and say, I'm sorry, report to social services, children removed, placed for adoption? It wouldn't work, would it? So why is social services doing this? Now, you could watch ITV and they'll say, yeah, but people don't change, people don't change. If somebody's not changing, that's coming down more to your actual coaching or psychology or tools that you are using in order to help that. Now, I studied counselling. I've got a degree in psychology, studied NLP, CBT, all of these different therapy types. You're non-reflective, you've got sort of like summarising and reflecting and all of this. But there's some hard-hitting, non-directive coaching out there. So NLP is fantastic. And there is ways to be trained in order to enable and empower people. But in the system, they're not doing that. It's about disempowerment, basically disarming parents and, you know, ripping their lives to pieces. So the reason I wanted to do this video, and I'm going to get used to doing videos, I still haven't quite got there, but wanting to get this message out to the right people, and, you know, more so as well to the parents, because yes, they do. They're vulnerable parents, and they can have lots of low, you know, people can have low self-esteem. Some of them have obviously come to the system because they wanted help. And once the children have been taken, and the worst thing that you see on a lot of these programs is parents sign the adoption papers, even when they don't want to. They're coerced into doing so. Okay? That doesn't mean that they were not forced from them because they signed. Now, I haven't signed. I won't sign fuck all. Yeah, they will never get a pen. I've told them, put that pen in my hand and I will stick it through the back of your hand. Yeah, there is no way they will ever get me to sign. My children were forcefully removed from me, dragging, kicking and screaming. And there was no reason to do so. Okay? I can use my case to prove how social workers get things wrong. Now, when you go into a court process, you're divided into 3 sections, sometimes 4 if there's a second parent. You've got the legal team for the local authority, the legal team for yourself, and the legal team for the children, which is CAF officers, and they are worse than social workers. Most of them actually are suspended social workers, sacked social workers. Don't you think that's funny? That you can be removed from being a social worker, but you can then become a CAF officer. Bit mad, innit? And all 3 legals work for the same department. They're all registered under the same governing bodies. Most of them drink together. Got paid to lose barristers out there, because once they have that order in their hand, if at any point they admit that they got it wrong, they're liable. Therefore, they're suable. So they will never ever admit that they were wrong. They're never going to go, hey, Miss Cottam, I'm sorry, we take your kids. You know, there you go, you can have them back. We made a mistake. I'm so sorry. Now, they want parents to take responsibility for their actions. Lead by example. When you make a mistake, you say sorry. You admit to your mistakes. And this is the sort of relationship that parents should be able to have with a social worker. You should be able to sit down with your social worker and say, oh, for fuck's sake, do you know what? I just want a coffee. You know, the kids are really doing my head in. You know, you're allowed to feel that way. We're all allowed to feel that way. It doesn't mean we feel that way all the time. Sometimes we've just had a freaking mad day with the kids, and, you know, you can get tired, especially as a single mum. Especially as a single mum who doesn't have granddads and nans and uncles and aunties and cousins and brothers and sisters and stuff like that who are around to take the kids to the park while I get stuff done. Doesn't mean I'm annoyed with my kids. It means I'm probably annoyed with the amount of washing I've got to do, as well as sort of other things that I've got to do. It doesn't mean I'm mad at my kids. I adore my kids. I did once with my older teenager though. It was the first time ever he stayed out late, and I was petrified. I'd seen a picture of him on top of Tesco's, and I was like, absolutely petrified. And I even said, I had to ring the police, and I said, you better be stood between me and my son when he gets here, because I'm going to fucking kill him. I mean, literally. And the police knew that, yeah, and they knew me in the area that I was in, and, they knew I was a single mum, and they took him to the side, and they explained to him properly and made sure that, he knew not to cross that line with me again, and he never did. But, police officers wouldn't have dared sort of say, oh, I'm blah. Because there's a very, very different thing in a parent who's frustrated to, parents who mean it, okay? There's a difference. Now, obviously, as a social worker, it has got to be so hard. And, I've got a lot of respect for the good ones, because how do you go into a home where you can see that there's issues, and you've got to go home at night and know that child is safe? But even the way they remove children, police, I mean it, police officers, please stop cuffing kids. Don't need 20 police officers. You don't need to come in and drag children out of their homes. There's a better way. It's wrong. Do you think you are Nazis? But there is something serious going on in this system, and I'm going to prove it. I'm going to prove it because they've got my kids. These have got my 2 babies, my angels. I brought them into this world. It's my responsibility to look after my children. But once your children are taken, you've got to know the game. And it's a game. 1, emotions in check. Yeah, one of the worst things that a parent can do is react. But if you don't react, okay, take my children, this is free childcare for me, I'm going to go off on holiday. You'd be a bit twisted if it wasn't going to actually rip you to pieces that your children have been taken. It's not like death. It's not like a child has died and you get to grieve and bury your child, and yeah, of course it's going to hurt. Of course it does, and you're going to have birthdays and Christmases where you're going to mark those occasions. But my children are here, somewhere. In this country. They better be in this bloody country, yeah? But my kids are in this country. I don't know where they are. I don't know who they're with. And ever since they were taken, I've never known where they are. And stuff that's happened to my children since they've been gone is absolutely unbelievable. But you won't find this in the paperwork. They don't write down that I had to put my children into the car kicking and screaming because they wanted to come home. They don't write down that my children ask where their brothers are and where I am. They don't write that down. They don't write down the things that would show that these children miss their families. They don't put it in the paperwork. They miss that out. That court order is about the removal. So why would they put any positives that were going to show that maybe they were wrong? There might be a couple of little things in there because they know, even if you're bad, there's some good in you. But they're just interested in that removal. Because the moment they've made the decision to do that, they've got to carry that out. And then the process, while you're going through this 26 weeks, it can take up to 4 months to get your medical notes. Even the complaints procedures can take 6 weeks, 9 weeks, 6 months. And these are children's lives. They're little babies. Little babies, yeah? How many babies come home? Very, very few. Very few. Very few. And then even some of these babies aren't adopted instantly. And they're getting to the age of about 2. And they're a little bit cute and people haven't got to be up all night and, putting nappies and making bottles, and These are babies who aren't even getting to breastfeed. The most important thing to a baby, and they're not even getting that time. Babies are being taken from the breast. What are they doing? Seriously, what are they doing? Okay? Something bad is going on in this system, and social services can no longer hide behind damned if we do, damned if we don't. Now, I'm one person. I'm just me. I've got a great partner, and he runs a thing called the Children's Judicial Review, and he's gathering information because we're learning. The kids were literally taken, and they're not his children. This is after the situation, but parents don't know about the HPC, they don't know about the ICPCP, they don't know about how to complain, they don't know what they're meant to do in this process. Those who are a little bit more subordinate just do as they're told and then still come out finding that the children have been written and placed for adoption. Some are kicking off, yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised. 5 months down the road, even I threaten to put a social worker in a coma, yeah? But how does that affect me as a parent? Because how many adults out there have made threats to people? I'm not saying it's right, but I've had people where I've had to defend my children in my lifetime. Of course I have. I stand my ground. Yeah, if somebody's endangering my children, then I'm right in front of my kids. So, what are we going to do about it? A child is taken every 20 minutes. In the time that I've been speaking, how many children have been taken? 1, 2, family 4, 5, 6, child taken. Another one, bang, knock on the door, child taken. Bang, knock on the door, child taken. What if it's yours? What if your child's next? Now, social media has obviously opened up a door for parents to be able to be heard. Parents, by the way, once the children are taken, are gagged, okay? So they're not actually allowed to speak out. But they got my kids and they kidnapped them, so I'm going to speak out. And they did. They did put me through the whole 2-year committal to prison and all this sort of stuff. But I represented myself and they withdrew the orders. I basically told them, do it. Do it, you'll never shut me up. And if they've got my children until they're 18, then they will never shut me up. I will be doing this until the day my children come home. And it is difficult. You know, legal aid is pretty much a whitewash now, unless you've got 50,000 to 100,000 for a judicial review, or you know, you're able to pay the £1,500 for a barrister to write a form for you, or you know, you've got the £3,000 for you know, an assessment, or you can pay 5,000 to 10,000 for a psychological report. You know, all of these different things, and I don't really know anybody who's in this situation who can do so. And you know, even people who could, what you're going to do, put your house up, sell your car, sell all the items of your house, go out there and go to work and make more money, and in the meantime your children have been in foster care longer and longer and longer and longer. Now, in June it will be a year since I lost in court, and it is taking quite a while, and it is hard, and I have been through grief, and it does hurt me. And some days are harder than others, and some days I'm out protesting, some days I'm speaking to other parents, because I'm trying to understand the system myself. Now, I do get that we do need this system to some degree, but if a parent has done something wrong, therefore it's up to the CPS to prosecute those parents, and if they break the law, they'd be in prison. Now, there's other people that you can put the children with during that time. There's other family members, grandparents, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunties, the neighbour down the road. You know, there's all these different ways that children can be kept within their own community, because once somebody comes out of prison, I mean, they're pretty much meant to be considered, rehabilitated. So therefore, then they would go back to normal life, and he might be assessed for a bit. And children have a right to heal. Parents have a right to fix their mistakes. And I'm not talking about people with sodomised children and all this sort of stuff and stuff. That's different, yeah. But they ain't gonna catch them ones. Most of them that do that are our own MPs. Children are taken out of foster care in order to abuse them, and they're MPs that are doing that. Are MPs. Okay? You get me? There is baby snatching going on. There is trafficking going on. Each of it is just 1% of it. But the core foundations of this system is corrupt, and we have got to get out the bad. And the only way we can do that is to all stand up. Now, in July, the main focus for a lot of the different campaigns is going on during this month, and there's one organisation called S.C.O.T, which is Stolen Children of the UK, and where I first broke my gag down there. But parents need to be out there by the masses. I mean, we need to be really, really making a stand. We need every parent there. I mean, gays come out in the hundreds of thousands, but parents come out in about 50 or 60. They're too scared to speak out. They're too ashamed that what people will think about them. But we need every single parent. Whether you were adopted years ago, we need parents to make a stand, and not just the parents, but the grandparents and the uncles and the aunts and the brothers and sisters and cousins and next door neighbour and second cousins and third cousins. Yeah, even if you just come down for the first day, it's for a whole week. And then you've got Maggie Tuttle, who runs the Screaming to Be Heard, and she predominantly works for children that are running away from foster care. There's a conference going on that as well. There's on the 25th of July. So we need some real serious mass attention, because parents are at the point now where they're going to shut the M25 down on July 24th. And the reason they need to do this is because they need the media to speak out for us. We need a mass, big bang, kids being stolen. This needs to be causing such a fuss that people are inspecting these cases, and that people are told what to do. Solicitors need to be out there advertising how to get children back. It needs to be about families first. And they do have these systems, and they say that they're doing the right thing, but they're not. They're underfunded, they're under-resourced. We need a system to change, and the only way we can change this system is by sticking together. Now, I'm quite happy to work with any parents who want to, change. I'm just doing this because it's the right thing to do. I can't turn a blind eye to what's going on. Even when my own children are back, I will probably always campaign against the system until it's working. I had already made the decision when I left foster care myself that there was something really wrong with this system, and that's probably pretty much why I went on and did youth work and psychology and things like that. I haven't quite landed on my feet within my career at the moment, but this is certainly pushing me more down, closer and closer to the niche that I intend to go in probably, and I've become one of them, make a career out of these children. Yeah, children aren't there, I don't profit, do you know what I mean? But I genuinely do care about what's going on, and I care about a lot of the parents out there because I've met them. And I meet some parents that you can sort of read the paperwork and go, okay, yeah, all right, I won't leave my kids with you. And then you see these amazing hearts and amazing people who've just never ever been told how to maybe do things differently. And once you actually have a conversation with them, and you meet some of the most amazing people. Now, the other thing is currently out there is a guy called Sid, and I love Sid to bits, right? I believe he's out there with Stephen, and I think there's a mum with them at the moment as well, and they're currently walking from Scotland down to London, and then they're off to Brussels. Now they're trying to rally up the general public and let people know what's going on in this system. And build it up, and they're hitting sort of all of the points down the country. And I could really do with parents knowing when they're going to be in an area and coming out and meeting and greeting them, and sharing their stories so they know why they're doing this. Steve has had his children placed for adoption as well, again unlawful. They're walking the streets, and they're raising awareness for what's going on with children screaming to be heard, and S.C.O.T and forced adoption exposed. Now we need to unite, and we need to come together, and we need to end this shit. We need a kids home, and the only way we're going to get our kids home is to educate ourselves with the court system. And I wouldn't rely on the legals, I really wouldn't, because most of these legals are corrupt as hell, and there's very, 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 very few people winning in the court systems as it stands at the moment. In fact, there's a massive big traffic jam going on because parents aren't even told they can appeal the decision. And yes, you can. If a child has been taken and you've lost, you've got 21 days to appeal that decision, and then they'll probably not be supported at the lower courts, and you get yourself into the high courts. You can go all the way to the Supreme Court, and if you can't pay the solicitors, then you just got to learn yourself, and that's what I've had to do. I'm still learning, and I probably won't become great at this until it's all over and done with, and I've got my children back, and then I'll be able to use those skills for other people. But it's a learning process, but we've got to do something. We've got to come together, and we need those that this isn't affecting to stand up to. And I wanted to come in before you to show you that we're not child abusers. We're not all drug users or alcoholics. We are normal people who are being absolutely screwed over by the system. And if it can happen to me, it can happen to you. And we've got to stop this. We've all got to come together to stop this. So, I ask you to connect to the website, Forced Adoption Exposed. So that's www.forcedadoptionexposed.com. I ask you to like the first page and share it out. And I need to build this up. And now I'm still building the website. My partner is currently building the website, and I'm currently building my personal story into a website as well. And I'm dealing with police complaints and HCPCs and courts and things like this. But I'm also, I've got over 3,000 parents now, and between it grows 15 to 20 people coming in a week, and I'm not on benefits, and I never ever intend to claim benefits. I've been down that road before, and I ain't going back. It's a trap, and it's not a trap that I want to be in, but we do need help, and we are up against a £50 million budget on adoption, and I need by June really, I need to have banners and leaflets and campaign material, and I'm running obviously the SEOs and the websites and the domains, and I'm not just doing this for myself, I'm doing this for this entire system that's going on, and all these other parents, and the parents are doing it for themselves too. And I need to be able to help people. We all need to be able to help parents who are in this situation. Yes, there's personal responsibility, but at the moment, we are fighting for our children, and we've got Sid out there as well, and we need money. We literally need money. I need to keep a roof over my head too, and I need to keep, sort of the campaign going. I need to be able to get to parents. I need to be able to read their paperwork. This isn't run as a business. This isn't run as a social entrepreneur or anything like that. It's not profit. It is 100% for, to be able to get to as many parents as possible. Even if I can just gather the cases. I mean, we really do want to bring a class action together for all of the parents where, we can prove definitely that these families have been failed. And we can't do that. I mean, up against 50 million. It's a bit of a David and Goliath situation, but we can do it, even if we can just get off the ground slightly. We are going to be putting products up on the website, and we'll get some campaign t-shirts up and wristbands and things like that. And I really, really urge parents, even if you're just buying a wristband for £1 or something, it all helps. It all comes together to help us be able to do this for for your kids, because your kids could be next. It really is that simple. Your kids could be next. They've got mine, and they've got nearly 100,000 other people's children too. Some of these are going out to other parents and grandparents, but most of them aren't. You've got grandparents out there fighting who've got no rights. They can't have their own grandchildren. So parents aren't just losing out, so the grandparents. And everybody, you know, is all working together. And people go through divorces. And you're thrown into the courts and CAF officers and war, and it's dangerous, it's lethal, it's barbaric what's going on out there. And so I really, really appreciate you watching, and I really ask you to have a look. And I was only meant to be doing a 3-minute video, and I'll get better at this. A bit of a tangent, as they say, I'm an Aspie, so I ask you to connect with my Facebook and my Twitter, and I've got many other social media domains, and you don't have to have my feeds on just in case I hit you all the time, but at least check out the information, check out the research, and please, 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 if you know somebody who's having their children taken away or under social services, be kind. People are killing themselves because they can't cope with the pain. They're not child abusers, they're just people who got a little bit lost and needed some help, and had they been able to ask the help of their local community, they wouldn't have needed to turn to social services in the first place. You know, next door neighbours' kids used to once sort of like take kids to the park and help people out, and we're just not in that society anymore. Be nice to them. Even the heroin addict on the streets who's homeless is a human being. Heartbroken, devastated, okay? He's a human being. People need love and kindness and compassion, and what's going on in the system is barbaric and cruel and torturous, and it's defamating and discriminating, and it's got to stop. It really, really has to stop. Parents are angry. I'm angry, but I can control it. Parents are hurt, families are hurt, and they're broken, and we need your help. And we can't do this without you. We don't always want to talk about the bad that's going on in this world, okay? But if we don't bring it out into the light, then we're not going to be able to resolve this situation. Philomena is currently out there, which is explaining what was going on years ago. But I'm telling you that this is going on now. Children are being unlawfully kidnapped by social services, and whether a parent is struggling with something or not, that does not warrant them to be able to remove children, and not for possible future emotional harm, because all you're actually doing is creating problems for those children too, and we need to break this cycle. It's got to break it. We need to break this, okay? So, I thank you for watching, and I know it's been a bit long, and I'll break things down a bit sort of easier. So, again, I'm Kellie Cottam, and you can follow my story if you want to know more about my story personally, and I'll do a video purely just about my story. I'm also going to do one about my physical condition and one about being on the autistic spectrum as well. I've got videos on my YouTube already. Obviously they're more to do with my committal to prison, but people do want to know about my story, and I've got nothing to be ashamed of. I've got nothing to be ashamed of. I have no problem answering any questions. People can ask me whatever they like, and even where, you know, I have done things, you know, we all have a right to put things right. And if you Google me, you'll see that I was involved in the media in 2010, and I'm preparing myself for going out into the public eye again. So I thank you for watching. Please, again, check out Forced Adoption Exposed. It really, really is going on. Forced adoption really is going on. And I ask adopters out there, please, please, I urge you, speak to the parents. You may find that the child that you've got has been kidnapped. And you may find that down the road that us parents are coming to take our kids back. So if you do want to adopt, please make sure that you are adopting genuine children that really do need homes, and not those that have already got homes that have been completely screwed over by the secret courts and social services and the system that currently exists. Take care.